Hive top. Still used today, metal, heavy. Okay, works though. Works just fine. Does have one little drawback. If you choose to use a metal top, you need to use an inner cover. Okay, one of the things that bees do is they glue everything together. And in all of the Langstroth hives, one of the greatest thing that they ever discovered was what was called bee space. Okay, it's like pi, 3.14785. Y'all all knew that. The speed of light, we all know that, right? Bee space, 3/8 of an inch. Anything smaller than 3/8 of an inch, they'll put glue in it, call it propolis. Anything greater than 3/8 of an inch, they'll start putting wax in it, or what we call burr comb. So bee space is very important. All of these components are standardized. Now, here's what's important here that you're going to learn the hard way. You want to use a metal top, and you don't use this inner cover. There's your 30, 40,000 bees, and they glue the top on. What's the one thing you don't do to a beehive? You don't walk up and kick it. Okay? So how do you get the beehive top off? It's glued shut. You've got a super of honey. You got a big old heavy super of honey full of bees. And they slip this in. Remember, it's a one-way door. And they pick that monster back up and they put it up there. The bees are going through the door into the lower chamber. Hope you don't get a big fat male bee because he'll stop it up. Okay? But the worker bees will keep going back down. 24 hours later, you come back to this hive and you go, wow, the bees are gone, most of them. Now you got a nice hive of honey. One major problem. What if you forget about it for a week?
What?
You got a pest problem. There's no bees up here protecting this honey. And even though we think of honey as being really nice and clean and pretty, and it is, I think it's beautiful. In fact, this came out of a honey super, passed that around, nice beautiful comb. Quite different than this. You'll see a lot of pollen in that comb. Doesn't mean the comb is bad. We do recommend that you rotate your comb or cull it out. Here's one on a plastic foundation where the bees were building it. You notice it's starting to get dark. That's usually due to brood that has been raised in it.
What happened to this one?
And then honeycomb will continue to even get darker. And this isn't a high pest class, but here's a really dark comb where wax moth has gotten in there and chewed it up. Okay? So if you use an inner cover, if you want to use that neat little tool, and again, I like little gadgets, I don't use it. I don't use the heavy top. I use the lighter top. I don't have a need for an inner cover. It's just not part of my beekeeping. Doesn't mean it's right or wrong. It just means there's more than one way to be a beekeeper. Okay, and that's why we're showing you the different variations of equipment. I normally don't use all metal. And for the most part, I don't think I could tell you why. I think I grew up on these with the wooden trim. So I normally use this type of a queen excluder.
What is that made of, plastic?
No, that is actually electrically welded and spaced. Okay, so she should not be able to fit there under normal conditions. There are some conditions during her lifetime that she could fit through there. And that's disheartening sometimes when you go in your honey super and you've got brood everywhere and the queen excluder's on. Okay, queens that haven't mated yet are thinner. Queens that are getting ready to swarm get a little thinner before they swarm in most cases. Sometimes they can slip through. In the swarming case, though, she's leaving, so that wouldn't be an issue. A little bit of burr comb on top of it. That happens due to our bee space rule. Okay? And let's talk one more little tidbit about the bee space on that. If you're buying all your frames, which I recommend, these frames sit in the box, and if this was glass, you'd notice that this disappears, and I can run my finger, and then I hit this edge. Okay? The next one goes on. The frame goes in. Same thing. It drops down. but it does not touch the frame below it. Does not violate that. Actually, it doesn't fit this box, whoever that is. Does not violate the 3/8 space. And what we keep referring to about bee space is if she can go through it and she's comfortable, she'll go through it. If she can't quite fit through it, she's going to glue it up. If there's too much bee space, she'll put what we call burr combs. She's going to build wax there. And now your frames are all getting stuck together. Okay? So if you make your own equipment, your boxes, you really need to be careful about this configuration, because if I remove this, and imaginary we put this in here, and it hangs too high, they're going to put comb and those two frames become one. That's a bear to get apart. And if you put it in there and your bee space is wrong and it's too close, it's under 3/8, she's going to glue it together, and it's a double grizzly bear to get it apart. In fact, often sometimes it'll rip the bottom out of them. Okay? So bee space is important. I do buy boxes. I have made boxes. Today I think I buy all of my bottom boards from Rossmann. This frame is an older frame, and whoever made this box, this frame doesn't quite fit down in there. Okay, so there's a little bit of a construction problem there. This frame and this box won't work. I don't mind showing you what doesn't work. Regardless of your bench configuration, and you take that honey super off of a hive over here, and you go over here and you set it down, what do you hear? 30, 40, 50 bees like crickets. Crunch, you just crunched them and killed them. You can't help it. Unless you got somebody there smoking the bottom, getting the bees off, and then you lay it down. Scrap wood. These are at every one of my benches. I want to take a honey super off or anything. That little knife edge, my surface area is just that now. Yeah, I get a bee every so often. But I might only get 3 bees, not 30, 40. Nothing like going to someone's hive and then all of a sudden turning this up and seeing bees that look like they've been in a book. Oh. Just decorated all the way around. And I've done it. And then finally I said, there's got to be a better way. I don't want to get out of, I don't want to lay it down. I just want to stand here. I want to pick up the weight, put it somewhere without crushing the bees. So, and that's what I came up with, just to say, oh, I'll cut those. Now that is treated wood. They're at every one of my stands, 2 per stand. I don't want to walk over there to get another one. And then that's what stops me from crushing all those bees. And then even now, if I want the bees to get up in there because I'm going to return it, I've now got a little gap, smoke them, the bees come up just a little bit, and I can return it to the box. So another little piece of cheap wood gadget.
I think we just
This is actually a beehive in a tree. Got it last fall. His apiary had about 5 beehives, and he said, gosh, these bees are doing so good. And then they swarmed on him, and he called me, and you're more than welcome to pass this around. It smells a little funny, but there shouldn't be anything live in it. Well, wait a minute, I saw something move. And here's how we got that. He didn't want to lose that queen, so we put a ladder 35, 40 feet up. I climbed up the ladder with a box. In fact, it was actually this one. And he cut the limbs until that fit just inside this box, so that when he made the final cut, it fell and was suspended just the way I had it underneath the table. Wow. Now, from that point, he climbed down, got rid of his tools, he climbed back up, and then we little by little got that down. Now, here's what we did after that. I said, Carlton, that queen is that important to you. And of course, we weren't about to tear that apart to find her. So I took that, made me a, just assume this is the bottom board. I actually put that in this box for the bees to come and go, just like a beehive. But what I did next was I made a spacer, and I went and got another box, came back to that hive, and I did this in the fall, and picture if that was inside the first box. I put another deep box here. I put drawn comb on top of it. No bees, just drawn comb. And those girls worked their way up into this box. So by the time I got through the winter, and I just pulled that out, beginning of February, I went there were no bees in that. Yeah, there were some bees crawling on it, but all the bees had built their home now above that. So I then took that out, and what Carlton was left with, the queen that had absconded or swarmed, and actually it's a hive doing very good so far this year. Now, was it worth it? Well, yeah, I get to come tell the story, but that's about all it was worth.
Where's the best place to put your
The only time you run into a problem is normally with the trucks that fog, and you're in the hot summertime, there's not a nectar flow, so the bees are all gathered on the front, they're gathered on the bottom, and the truck comes by at the right time, the wind's blowing. I have actually had, say 5,000 to 6,000 bees get enough chemical to kill them. Now, just so that you know, most of the chemicals that they use in aerial, sometimes they're seeding, for larvicides, and then it's pellets that drop through the foliage and goes in the water. But if they are actually spraying, for the most part, they will tell you that they can hardly kill a bee from the air. The pesticides they're using today are that weak. And they say, in fact, it takes a couple of hours to kill a mosquito. But, listen, the Chatham County Mosquito Control is absolutely excellent. I get phone calls all the time, all the way out to Bloomingdale, that says, listen, our plane's going to be turning around. And it's turning around over Ottawa. I said, okay, thank you very much.
So what do you do when you're in there?
I really don't do anything, except if I know they're flying late in the afternoon, they'll call me 3 days in ahead and say, listen, Greg, the way the weather is, the pattern shows that we're going to be spraying Thursday or Friday, maybe Saturday.
So what do you do to protect it?
At that point, even though I don't do anything with my bees, I don't go out there and work with my bees. I don't want to be out there in the afternoon and the bee tops be off and they fly over. So that's where it comes in handy. And again, they're excellent. They'll call you for those too.
But what do you do? The same thing? You just don't mess with the
Well,
bees
that goes back to your earlier discussion, location, location, location. Why would you put a hive so close to the street that the fog truck or the mosquito truck could actually spray it?
So how far is safe, do you think?
It could be 20 feet from the street, but you need a red tip hedge in between it.
Okay. Just
See what I
some
mean?
sort of
Something to
barrier.
block it. Something to block
Can
it.
you have a beehive in like if you have like a side yard with a fence and a wall, it's like 6 feet,
Sure.
and then they just go up. So they're perfectly happy to go up to get whatever they need.
One of the tricks, and this supports what we were talking about earlier, if I take this beehive and I lay it down so that there's 100, 300 feet in front of it, not a single tree or a bush, if there's a nectar flow in that direction, they're going to come out of that hive and slowly gain altitude. If I put a 3-foot bush in front of it, they're going to come out of that hive and then start gaining altitude. You can actually make them go up and leave.
So a fenced area is almost ideal.
Absolutely.
To put them in.
Georgetown had quite a few beehives along their fences, and of course the neighbors never knew until one day the neighbor walked up and was standing next to the fence and they see all this shh. There's no tree over there, so what's over there? And they climbed the fence and looked, and there were beehives there.
Thank you.
Thank you. So then I use a much smaller little spoon just to hold it in place. So now all the weight is going in. Because try to imagine, 6 hours.
I like to give them 3 days. Get them in there, get them home, get them where I'm going to put them. We're there. Now let's give them 3 days. Just leave them alone. Let them settle in. I mean, you remember when you moved into your house, you didn't want to everybody wanted to come visit you, right? Yeah, nobody likes that. So let them sit in there for about 3 days, and then let's go back and check. Okay, and basically at that point, we're not getting real fancy. We're not going to be in there for 3 hours. We're going to open it up. We're going to make sure the queen's in there. Make sure we see some eggs in there. Make sure the bees are still there. We're just covering the basics. We shouldn't be in there very long. One of the biggest problems I've seen with especially new beekeepers, they get in the hives and next thing you know, it's 15 minutes later, it's like, hey, you shouldn't, you know, you shouldn't be at 5 minutes. You should be walking away, okay? Per hive. I know we did a research project with the university, and one of the things we had to do with this group that I was with is we had to time ourselves on each hive we went through in this research project, and there's probably about 10 of us doing it. And all of us were well-seasoned, high-experienced beekeepers, and one of the things they found that we spent an average about 1.5 to 2 minutes per hive. Okay, and that's, of course, we were more, you know, we're all kind of commercial guys. We run through it pretty quick, and it's like, okay, next. So that just kind of gives you an idea. You know, if you're in there for 15 minutes, you're doing something wrong, okay?
Or how far down do you go in that minute and a half?
I'll go all the way to the bottom. It just depends on what I'm doing and what I'm looking for, okay? But yeah, I can work a whole hive. It doesn't take that long.
But the bees will actually make comb and lay eggs in 3 days. Is that what you said?
They should, even with a package. Now, it won't be full, but you'll at least have 3 frames. Let's say I just put some bees in here, and this was just foundation. You know, I'll going this way. That's when they come all out up in your face. Twice. That's the difference between European and African bees. But, you know, let's say I just installed a package, at least 2 or 3 frames, they should be working very hard. So that, you know, the first couple of frames, we're just going to slide out. I might take 2 frames out, set them off to the side, and at that point, I'll pull it on over, and now I'm looking at these frames. Now, I don't have to pull this frame out. What am I looking for? I'm looking to make sure the bees are there, make sure the queen's there. If I get to this point and I see the queen and I can see some larvae and stuff in there, am I done?
Yeah.
Boom, boom, next hive, okay? You're a hobbyist, you're new at this. No, you're not going to do that. You're going to go, you want to look, okay? So, you know, even at that point, we can come on in, we can pull it out, we can look at it. Ooh, we got brood, we got a queen, everything's good. You know, go on through it, go through your 3 frames, everything's fine, let's close it on up, okay? One of the things I like to tell all my new beginner beekeepers is when you open up that hive, you're opening up for a reason. I will not accept the answer of, I'm just going to go check my bees. What are you checking for? Well, I'm just going to go check. Okay. No, you're not walking the dog just to walk the dog, okay? You're walking the dog so go to the bathroom, all right? There's a reason behind this, okay? When we open up a hive, we're doing it for a reason. We're checking food stores. We're checking to make sure the queen's laying. We're checking her pattern. We're checking to see if they're fixing to swarm. We're checking for diseases. Whatever that reason is, you need to tell yourself that before you get to that hive. And once you've determined whatever it is that you were looking for, unless something else has caught your attention to cause you to go further or deeper, you're done. This is old, right? This is new, all right? Older frames get diseases in them. They just get old. You get some fungus in there. We're not even going to go to diseases right now. Not as good for your bees, all right? So you want to cull these out every year, and it's really no different. I actually do it in the exact same way because you don't always have bad frames like this. After a while, after a couple of years, you just get good frames through your whole hive because that's what you want. Well, then you start doing the exact same thing. But what most beekeepers do is they'll put dates on the top, and they'll put like 11 for 2011 on here, okay? And they'll have this hive full of frames. And then generally your 5 years is what you're wanting to do. And what I actually do, I can do it a lot easier because I have a lot more frames, a lot more options. But every year I pull 2 frames from my hive, okay? Pull, once again, your oldest frames go out to the outside, your bad frames go to the outside. So in January I'll come in, pull my 2 outside frames because they're the oldest or they're the yucky ones, and I pull my 2 and I get 2 new ones. And so you start rotating them like that, and then you got 10 frames. Every 5 years you're replacing all your combs. Does that make sense?
And then that's just trash. It's, you burn it.
Once again, you scrape off, harvest the wax. Scrape off the wax, harvest it, and you can just reuse your frames.
Gotcha.
Got it?
Mm-hmm.
So you get rid of the plastic piece in the middle, but you save
Yes.
the wooden frame.
And there's different types of waxes. I mean, foundations like this right here is your crosswire. This is actually wax all the way. And if I get something bad right here, you can actually just cut this out and they'll actually fix that. But they won't fix this plastic stuff right there. So it depends.
What do you prefer?
You know, pretty much what you want to do is when that hive is working and the foragers are out, that's when you want to come in here, okay? And that's why they don't recommend cloudy days, obviously rainy days. Days like that, those foragers are not out. And so instead of going in and working that hive, when you first install, it's not that bad, but you're talking several, you know, maybe that next year when that hive's bumping, you know, 30, 40,000 bees. Well, okay, if it's cloudy and overcast and they're not flying that day, guess what you're dealing with? 40,000 bees. Okay, if it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, how many are you dealing with? 10. The rest of them are out working. Okay, so that's a big difference. And the older they get, we were just talking earlier, the older they get, those are the ones that are, those are your defensive bees. The older bees, they're going to be more defensive, they're going to be more likely to sting, and those are the ones that are out foraging. So while they're out, gone working, that's when you come play. That's the best time to do it, okay? After that, you know, we got our bees installed. You know, this is our first year. What's our goal for this year? What do we want?
Establish the hive.
We want to establish, our goal is to get them through winter. You know, that's it. We're not going to harvest. We're not worried about honey. All we're worried about is getting this hive ready for next year. So then they can make all the honey for us, okay? So that's all we're going to be doing this year. We're going to be going in there during the honey flow months, when our honey flows are coming in, which is between when here?
Now in June.
In between now and June.
Or July 1st.
July 1st, okay, first week of July?
That's the end of the honey flow.
Okay, July 1st. So in between now and then, basically all we're going to be doing, we're going to be watching this colony. It's going to be growing. We want to watch the speed of the growth, which may speed up and slow down, but we're going to maintain that. Another thing, especially you new beekeepers, write everything down. Number your hives. You got 2 hives, I know, you can keep track of them. Hive 1, hive 2, hive A, hive B. I don't care how you do it. You can number whatever you want. You can call it Sally and Bobby. Doesn't matter, all right? Name them and keep notes, okay? You got Sally and Bobby. You put them in there. Bobby has 3 frames this week. Sally has 4 frames. Write it down, okay? You will learn mountains of years of experience just by going back reading your own notes, okay? Tons of experience. Going back, reading your own notes. How long did it take that thing to requeen itself? What happened after it swarmed? What happened right before it swarmed? That you said, well, I seen this, but I didn't think nothing about it. But I wrote it down, and now I remember, okay? And so when you see it again, it definitely helps tremendously, more than you'll ever read in a book, because what they wrote in the book doesn't always click here, but what you write down, you know what you saw, okay? And it makes a lot of difference. It's so hard, even for me, to read a book, you know, even on disease and stuff. You read stuff, and you're like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to be looking for. Okay. And then you'll see it and never even notice it, completely miss it, and then somebody will show it to you, and you're like, oh, that's what they were talking about. So keep your own notes on everything. Okay, now we're back on track. Pretty much through your honey flow months, you know, now till July 1st, you're watching them grow, okay? You're not having to feed them at this point. You might feed them that first week to kind of help them get kind of kick-started, but after that, you got a honey flow going on. And they work for who? That's right, they work for you. You don't work for them. So you let them do it. You let them go get the honey, okay? You let them build up naturally. Everything should be going fine. You're watching them. You're keeping notes, all right? And no more than about once a week, about once every 7 days. So on the weekends or your day off, whenever it is, that's your day that you get to go in there and check your bees, all right? You don't get to go in there every other day. Y'all got that?
So leave the honey alone the first year too.
Yeah, we'll get to that, but yeah, you're not going to harvest anything. For all we're working on is getting through winter.
Make sure they're in there.
So we're really at this point, all we're doing is we're watching that growth, we're watching how much you're expanding. Now, general rule of thumb, and it works really great, you put your next box, whether it's a super, whether it's a brood box, whatever you're going with next, which is most likely going to be a super. So if you do get a nuke or something, or if they do grow strong enough, you go at 75% or 7 frames. Once they get to that 7th frame, filled out with bees and wax, okay, now you can add another box on top of it, all right? and then they'll slowly start moving up into it. And that's pretty much rule
You're
of
running
thumb.
an 8-frame box, I mean.
Still 75%, so you're still looking at 6 frames.
If you're gonna put bees or a package or a nuke in with frames that already are filled out with combs,
Mm-hmm.
what would you do different?
Same thing. I mean, you're still looking at that 75%. I mean, even though, like, this box has drawn out cone in it, if I was putting bees in there or a package in there on this drawn out cone, it's still gonna be the same thing. Until those bees start getting out to that 7th frame, working it, and they're actually working it, putting honey in it or pollen, or they're raising bees in it, you don't add nothing, okay? And that applies from now on. You know, when you add that super, and next year you get to that 3rd, 4th, 5th super, 75. Once they get 75%, you can add another super. 75%, add another super. What happens if you just go in there and stack 10 supers on top of it and walk away is they'll go right up the middle, and they won't fill them out all the way. Okay, and we'll get a little bit more into management crowd later to finish up a honey flow. So that's the main things we're concerned about coming into that part.
Yes.
Yes.
And they maintain the temperature inside that hive, regardless of the outside ambient temperature. They'll hold that at 91 to 94 degrees in there. As long as they've got honey, they're not going to freeze out. Winter, you wrap them up to keep the wind off them up north, but you want to make sure they've got ventilation, because moisture gets in there from their respiration, and they freeze, get moldy, and you lose your bees. And our bees that we have cultivate are primarily from Europe. The eusocial, meaning U prefix, it means good or true. So they're a true social insect. They have several generations in there. Bees, the jobs that they're doing is strictly related to their age. As they mature, they go through different stages, developing different characteristics and producing different substances, actually. When I started keeping bees, the gals would say, "I want to be the queen bee." That's me. Okay. Here you'll see in the center we have the queen. Notice her longer abdomen, and that's just packed full of ovaries. You know, piles of ovaries. The little worker bee here on my right, and one of the big differentiations, they have the mandibles for chewing. They also have little pockets here for storing pollen when they're out. They'll take the pollen, brush it off themselves, and pack it on there and bring back their protein supplement. Now we have Mr. Drone on the other side, and his only purpose in life is to produce sperm to mate with another queen. If you've got a beehive and their bees are nasty, if the queen is not laying eggs and they're not producing any honey, there's one thing the beekeeper will do. So if the little lady's not doing anything, she's not putting out or anything, you pinch your head off and go get a younger one. You still want to be a queen bee, girls? Okay. Characteristics of a queen, the tremendous large ovaries and all these pheromones that she's producing. These identify her as the queen. You know, this is in the dark, remember, and she's the only one in there laying eggs, or she's the one producing hormones, pheromones, that keep the unfertilized workers. They are also females. All the workers are female. That suppresses their ability to lay eggs. They're recognized and they elicit responses from workers, drones, and other queens. There's, again, the mandibles, just the difference in morphological differences in the different castes. They have the reduced pollen basket in the queen. Behaviorally, all she's doing is laying eggs. She's basically trapped in there. It's not the, wonderful life a lot of people imagine. And high animosity toward other queens. In the spring, they lay eggs along the bottom and develop down into queen cells. They look like little peanuts hanging along the bottom of the combs. And first one hatches out, she's going to go in and rip all of her sisters to pieces. She wants to be the queen boss. Royal jelly, you see down, these are queen cells that are still open. This is the royal queen jelly. It's produced in the mandibular glands and heads of very young adult bees. It's queens are fed lavishly at this. Queens will be fed probably 1,600 feedings. A worker normally gets about maybe 150 feedings. So she's going to develop much more rapidly. And there's just showing the pollen there. So royal jelly secreted and used to feed the larvae, as well as the adult queens. And hypopharyngeal glands is a term for those glands in the heads of the workers. Caste differentiation. The queen gets these extremely heavy feedings. Note across right under the headline there, fertilized egg, unfertilized egg, fertilized egg. A fertilized egg is going to be a female. You can take any female fertilized egg and they can turn it into a queen by feeding it this royal jelly. As I said, the workers are going to get some to develop. The beekeeping, being nasty, perhaps Africanized bees, it may not be full Africanized bee colony, but you may have picked up a drone or so from Africanized. They're just more aggressive, and so the beekeeper, his job is to watch out for that. Yeah, I don't want it stung and don't want them crawling all over me. So beekeepers are your best guard against Africanized bees. Okay, here we go with the fertilized egg. The queen goes down to lay the egg in the cup of the honeycomb, and she mixes a sperm with each egg, and they will develop into females. The drone is from an unfertilized egg. You'll see this little sausage lying down in there. They're in a good healthy hive that's getting good pollen. They'll be floating on a jelly down in there. And then they're developing, you'll see them larger. You can't notice it, but they're constantly moving around in there eating. Here they're getting nice big plump larvae growing up. You have the egg, larva, and pupal stage. Here we've got showing the pupa. Here's the queen depositing the egg. It hatches in 3 days to this little larva. It goes through, depending on what caste it's going to be in, determines how long and how well it's fed. You'll see them circulating here. Eventually they wind up standing out, head out. This is a pre-pupal stage, and here they're being capped. There'll be wax caps put over them to protect them, just like any other insect in a cocoon. That's their little, and they actually form a little cocoon in there around themselves. And they develop and they darken over time. They darken and develop the recognizable eyes, legs, and things very soon. Actually, at this white stage, they're quite recognizable when you examine. Now, here's the queen cell. They can start out with any cell if they have to in an emergency and begin feeding a young larva, newly hatched larva. And eventually they build the cell, turning downward. You'll see the queen, you saw how they were just floating on that lavish feeding. And here's a little drawing of a queen cell. As I said, they look like a peanut hanging down there. Here we go. All bees stay 3 days in the egg stage. They hatch out in 3 days and are fed according to what the need is of the hive. Most of them workers. They're fed and they're going to grow in that stage. That once they get to the pupal stage, they're sealed. They're no longer feeding. All their growth is in this period of time. All that rapid growth and anatomical formations, everything, just amazing. It all shoots out in those few days. So you'll see that the longest term development are the drones. They're in there and fed fairly heavily. The queen, she's fed so lavishly, she develops so quickly. Females do all the work. Right, girls? The worker bees work in the nest for the first 3 weeks of their life, generally. I'm saying generally. All these things are exceptions to them. The hive bee work includes cleaning, actually going around policing, cleaning out. Once the new bees hatched out, they're going in there, cleaning it up. They're carrying any waste products, any ants that get in there, they kill them, drag them out. Okay, then they're also involved in nursing, literally caring for the young, feeding them, turning them around. You see them going down in there, turning them around. And in what we call hygienic behavior, it's a recessive trait. they'll go in these cells, detect diseased bees, diseased larvae, pull them out, take them out and throw them out of the hive. You don't want little Johnny in the classroom with little Susie who's carrying the flu, so you take little Susie out for the day so everybody doesn't get sick. Same thing. There's a lot of work going into breeding bees that have this tendency to, it's called hygienic behavior. There's also varroa sensitive hygiene behavior that they can sense this varroa mite, which is a parasite of the bees. They're very good at cleaning those out. So a lot of work is going in that direction now. Instead of trying to cure everything with antibiotics or drugs or whatever, they're going to natural uses. Okay, other work in the hive, ripening, nectar ripening and honey storage. The field bees come in with a stomach full of nectar. They transfer that to one of the hive bees. The hive bees add some enzymes, another dose of enzymes, pack it, take it into the cells, put it there. It's actively and passively cured by, they fan their wings to keep air circulating to evaporate it. They're going to take that down to, a low water percentage, so it does not. If they leave too much water in it, it's going to ferment, and too little water is going to sugar in there. It won't be as accessible to them. Okay, there we are storing our honey. And they also pack pollen. Pollen is generally brought in by the field bees, and they take it in, pack it down in the cells themselves. You buy bee pollen, it's raw pollen. You get it out of the hive, it's bee bread. It's been chewed and processed and enzymes put into it. It's much more digestible, but you probably can't buy it in the stores. And that is the form that the bees are actually digesting, and the young then are generating this royal jelly, and it's fed, actually small amounts are fed to the workers to keep them going too. Propolis. Propolis is bee glue. Some hives glue everything shut. You got to scrape it. It's gooey. It's a rosin base. It actually, like rosin off a tree. It's sticky. Gets all over you, and it changes from season to season as the different saps and things that they bring in. That's their bee glue. And in the winter, they'll close down the openings with that. That's their plaster. They'll close down openings. I've even heard of mice getting into the hive. They sting it, kill it, wrap it in propolis. It's in a cocoon. Somebody, dumb bee joke, that's called a mausoleum. Good clean water is essential to the bees. As we said, not just for diluting the honey to be able to eat and keep going. They need to regulate the temperature inside that hive, one way or the other. They're going to, in the summer when it's, gets a little on the warm side here in Savannah, they're in there fanning, keeping that, as I said, that's 93 degrees is their target year-round. They're going to keep it that way. And they also, keep ventilation going throughout the hive.
How far should a bee have to go to get water in these areas?
Bees, they'll go quite a distance, but if in your apiary, you should have a source of water. If you don't, your neighbors are going to holler at you because they're over in their pool. They actually seem to like chlorinated water. They're attracted to it. Some people even put out a little baby pool and put a little chlorine in it, at least to get the bees used to coming to that site. Here we go. This is interesting. Secreting wax. They have little, inside the abdomen, there are little wax glands. They're secreting. You see one bee taking the wax, this little flake of wax from another one. They're going to chew it, form it into the honeycomb. Okay. Here we go in guarding. The final stage before they become field bees is guarding. It'll be all lined up there at the entrances like this. They'll sit there. You'll see another bee come flying in. They'll run up their little antenna, greeting the other one, sizing them up, and their pheromones also. Each bee has its own odor. Each hive has its own odor. An intruder, and they're going to be all over it. Okay, after 3 weeks, they take the orientation flight. You'll see them just come out, just a little swarm of them outside, up and down, up and down. They're sizing things up. One little trick, if you move a hive from one location to another, you want to put, say, brush or something in front of it, so when they fly out, they fly up and find their location. They just go barreling out, assuming they're still at home, running out of the house, and they wind up being lost. So they're out sizing that place up. All insects have 6 legs, spiders and insects. All insects are not bugs. Okay. And each leg in the bee has different structures. The hind leg has the pollen baskets for storing that. They also have foot glands on each foot when they're tracing around in there, especially the queen. She has real strong pheromones from the foot glands. It kind of helps suppress, you know, other queen development. Okay, and the antenna, they're all jointed. Insects are jointed. Every little segment, you got the tarsus and the femur and all these different sections on the leg. The middle leg is generally the one used for grooming. They use that center pair of legs for their grooming. You're pulling the pollen off or trying to scrape off these varroa mites. I'll show you a picture if we've got time later. The antenna and the little hairs on their head, they're the primary communication, you know, receptors. The wings, they're unequal shaped wings. They have membrane-like wings. Actually, in entomology, you know, you differentiate a lot of different species by the venation of their wings. Someone sits around and writes down, this one branches here and that one and that one, and this is that species. And pretty dry stuff. Paired jointed appendages, segmented body of 3 parts, bilateral symmetry. We are all bilaterally symmetric. It slices down the middle, pretty well look the same on each side. An alimentary tube, or the digestive tract they have, and an open circulatory system. They don't have veins and arteries like we do. They've got a heart and a little aorta that kind of squishes the hemocoel around. They don't really have blood. There are no red blood cells. They have a different respiratory system. And then they possess, obviously, sexual reproduction. Okay, here's the general anatomy. You see the head, thorax, and the waist, real thin wasp waist there. Okay, on the head, you've got 2 sets of eyes, the ocella in the top of the head, and the compound eyes. As I said, speaking earlier, bees really don't see across the full spectrum. They especially hone in on the ultraviolet and that end of the range. The red, they see red as a gray color. And some flowers, if you ever notice, red flowers generally have a long throat to them. They're reserved for the hummingbirds and moths and bees with a longer tongue. Even red clover is awfully long for the honeybee to, you know, get in and get the nectar out of it. Some flowers even have a little ultraviolet reflective landing pad on them for the bees, to direct the bees. We can't see it, it's in the ultraviolet. The mandibles, that's for chewing the wax. Bees can actually tear up wood. You know, sometimes you put, for certain purposes, you put a piece of paper across to separate the hives temporarily, and they'll chew right through that in a day or so. So they've got pretty heavy-duty mandibles. And then you see the proboscis, and that's, for our purpose here, just the tongue. There are several different parts to the mouth, but we'll keep moving here. Here's more on the antennae and the body. The body hairs, they're also sensory receptors. And let's see, compound eyes. You've all seen the picture of the fly eye, you know, view of the bajillion of you looking at them. That's what we've got here in the bees. Bees can it's almost like a strobe effect to their eyes when they need it to help hone in on a moving flower that's blowing in the wind. It's a pulsating thing to help them, you know, hone in and fly in on that. And here's just more about the mouth parts. The interesting thing here's a little bee down. She's just slurping up some sugar water. Somebody's put a drop of sugar water down there and she's automatically, I mean, they go right for it. There's a real close-up of the head, the antenna, and the body hairs. And their body hairs are all over, not just on the head. And, okay, the thorax. That's the locomotor section. All the wings are attached there. All the legs, all 3 sets of legs are attached there. All the flight muscles and the leg muscles, they're all there. Okay, and you'll see it points out the little wing hook. They can fold their wings back and just connect them to preen and groom themselves, but as they fly, that little hook, you know, hooks back in there and holds them rigid. Let me see. And notice on the abdomen, the spiracles. We'll go see that here again in a moment. 3 pairs of legs. See the tremendous difference in the leg structure of each one. Here's the outer, this is that pollen basket. Here's the inner surface. But all these hairs, and they work it back, and they'll pack that pollen in there for the flight back home. Middle leg is pretty well their preening leg, and they do manipulate things with their front legs, push things around, help pack pollen in. Okay, they're showing an actual photograph of the pollen basket on the hind leg. Okay, wasp waste. And now, the abdomen. Note again the spiracles. What are spiracles? That's their breathing tubes. The abdomen has repeating segments. Each little band here, little colored band. Repeating segments. The spiracles are the air openings, or the trachea. Internal organs, primarily within that system, you have endocrine and exocrine glands also in the abdomen. So that the head is the sensory receptor primarily. The thorax is your locomotor. They're all their wing muscles and everything primarily there. Here's just a little drawing of things. I mentioned the hypopharyngeal glands. Here's where that royal jelly substance is produced. Salivary glands, the alimentary tract, the honey stomach, digestive system. This is the Malpighian tubules. That's their equivalent of a kidney. And let me see. The hemocoel, this is representing the circulatory system. You'll see the heart and the aorta. It's pushing toward the head, the vital nerve center is there, and the receptors, the sensory receptors in the head. And it just floats back through the rest of the bee and is drawn back in and absorbed back through and pumped through by that heart again. Okay, this is a picture of the respiratory system, the trachea, the spiracles on the outside drawing it in, trachea, and coming back to the, attaching all the way to the aorta. They don't have red cells transporting oxygen. They don't have the hemoglobin. They rely on an osmosis, often, pretty well at this point. And it's just phenomenal to me that they have enough, pull in enough oxygen to beat those wings like they do. Okay, the reproductive system. Here, in the photographs earlier, you saw the worker bee. She has ovaries, but they're not developed because she did not get the protein lavishly heaped upon her. Here's the queen. Each one of these is going to be cranking out an egg, or can produce at least 1 or 2 eggs a day, each one of these little ovaries. And here's the drones, testes, the sperm production. And these are all within the abdomen. Now you see a lot of exocrine glands, including the wax glands. You saw the wax. I think there's another slide in here somewhere showing that better. The little plates of wax are excreted. When the honey stomach is full, more wax is produced, which is a good deal. If you're bringing in more nectar, you want a place to put it. So let's make some more wax, leave the bees back there, chew it up, and make it into another cell while I go out and get some more nectar. You guys, Pilgrim, you take care of this one, I'll get you another. Salivary glands, hypopharyngeal glands for the, let's see, this one, Masnov gland. And everybody is probably, in this room, has probably experienced this one, the poison gland, when you get stung. Therefore, gland, probably, I really can't find anything definitive on it. It's perhaps marking eggs that the queen lays, so the bees going in there, the nurse bees taking care of them, realize they are genuine queen eggs and not an egg-laying worker that has somehow not read the right pheromones correctly and has been prompted to lay eggs. So it's a way of eliminating those. We can talk about that later. The Masnov gland is their homing beacon. You'll see them, let's see, I think they're, no, that's more of the wax plates. See them working out underneath? Can you see what I'm talking about on those, on the bottom? And Masnov glands. Right here, this, as I mentioned earlier, repeating segments. Back here at the back segment where that gland is, this opens up. They stand at the entrance, beat their wings, emit that little homing beacon, helps the other bees come back into the hive. Also, they will do that at water sources or nectar sources. It's a little, as I said, Masnov, think of it as a homing signal. When you perceive most things as chemicals, That's what you need. Alarm communications, the mandibular glands. You know, they're in the attack. You know, when you have an intruder coming in, mandibular glands, it's also an attack sort of thing. The sting. If you get stung, you'll notice a scent, so it's like, kind of like a ketone or something, like fingernail polish removers. It's in that category, that alarm scent. At least that's what it seems like to me. You get a little, every time you get stung, you'll see that. What does that do? Hey girls, come on, let's add to this. You know, they hone in on that. They found pay dirt with their sting, but when they sting, that's the end of their life. That barbed stinger stays in and they rip their guts out. The queens do not. Okay. European foul broods. Chalk brood and stone brood are fungus that gets down in there. You get don't have good ventilation, or you put your beehives in a low, humid site, you're going to have problems with that. Okay, here's our buddy. This is really wreaking havoc. Here's the small hive beetle, and they're about half the size of this little knob on the end of his antenna. Many of us can show you these things. But here's what can happen. If you lose track of caring for your hive, they get in there. These are all the larvae crawling out. They lay their eggs down in there. They feed on the honey and even the larvae and the cocoons and everything. And it looks, if you ignore your hive, it looks like somebody took a shotgun to the hive. It's just all shredded. You'll see these things oozing out of the bottom of the hive. There's all those larvae down there.
You take your top off. This is just one way installing these. Now I got 4 different ways to show you how to do it. You take your package bee, take your sugar water, spray it a couple of times, bump them, maybe spray them again. You want to take your hive tool, you pop your top off. You got your. They send a can of sugar syrup that comes with it. And one reason you drop your bees to the bottom, they won't be clinging to this. Take your queen out, lay it to one side, cover this back up to keep your bees in it. Then you can lay it one side for the time being. You got your queen. Now this is just one way. You got a metal strip here. You can attach it to it. But you got a screw or a nail or something on the candy end of the cage. Take your cork out. And I put mine with the candy up. Why would you put the candy up?
Bees work up. In case the nurse bees inside the cage die, they can get it. The queen can still get out.
That's right. Some of them do it with the bottom, and like I say, if a nurse bee, one of those bees, attendants in there, it dies, could plug the hole up. The queen can't get out. But if you turn it this way with it up, the demon's going to fall to the bottom, of course, and then they have a chance to work their way out. But if you take a nail and push through that candy, that kind of gives them a head start. And this application, you take it with that metal strip and just bend it over where to hang like this. Another way you can do it, if they don't have a cage or the strap on it, or if it falls off, take your rubber band. Can you see that? Take your rubber band, anything to hold it up. And you want to ease this back in. Now, put it to one side or put it toward the back. The reason I'm saying that, because if you see here, I feed from the center, from the top. Take a mason jar or whatever. And you don't want that queen right on that hole. All right, here again, you bump it a couple of times, spray it a time or two, lay this to top to one side. In this application, they taking, pour your bee, I won't pour them all out right now, but they pour them on top. And it's going to take a few minutes for these work down. You take the top, cover it up. You can use anything to put your sugar water in. Come back 4 or 5 days. Make sure your queen has been released from the cage. And then sometimes she's already laying, sometimes she's not. Sometimes it takes a few days to start laying, but you want to look for eggs if you can, or see the queen, or make sure she's released. Sometimes the queen dies, you may have to get another. But that'd be one application. Take your top off, lay it to one side. You got your package bees, spray it again, both sides, and bump it. Then take your queen out. This one's got a little different way I put the queen in there. They got this way. See, they got it upside down, as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, and you can change that if you want to. But then you want to remove your syrup, put your cover back over it. Now, on this one, you probably want to remove the frame out, put them between, and just let it suspend like this. Or, if by chance this comes off, you don't like that idea, take it this way, put your gem clip, piece of wire any way through it to suspend it. Anything to hold it. And then what they do on this one now, say if you need that room, lay out to one side, you put that in later, put your cover back on, bump your bees again, spray them a little bit, lay it to one side, they come and pour the bees on the outside. Any questions on that? Come here, we're going to take about 5 frames out. We're going to lay these to one side. Get your package up here, spray them, bump them down, spray them a couple times, remove your top. Take your sugar can out, remove your queen, lay it to one side there, cover it back up. There again, make sure your queen is okay, she's moving around, whatever. Move your cork. And on this one now, see it out of the way. This is very flexible. It won't hang up here. Take your push pin. Can't do this in a plastic frame, but you do it in a wooden frame. And there again, if you don't like that, come back with a gem clip wire or small wire and put through anything to hold it up. But like I say, put it toward the back or toward one side. All right. Bump it again. Spray it. Remove your top. Set the whole thing in. See the advantages? Make sure you put feed on there, and it's ready to go. Move your top. What I'll do, I come in here, move about 3 frames out, and especially these. A lot of times, I'll spray these frames with sugar water, kind of give them a head start and encourage them to go to work. Here we go again. We take the top off, remove the sugar syrup, take the queen out, put the top back on again, make sure the queen is living. Now see, this has got a little stiffer deal here. Remove your cork, punch a hole through it with your nail, set this to one side. So you can hang it off the back or one side, whatever, in between a couple of frames there, and it'll pretty well got room for that. And then one more time, I'll pump it, spray them a little bit, and what I'll do is pour them in. There's always going to be a handful that won't come out. Just set them in the front. Put your frames back in. Now be careful putting your frames in, because if you got them all piled up here, you don't want to kill them. Just gently work them down a little bit, and ease them in there. Put your top on. Now this one has got, let's move this. This one, you've got a different type feeder. What they call a Broadman feeder. Toward the front, Put your mixing jar of sorts on it. I mean, there's different ways you can feed them, but main thing is to feed them once you install them.
Photographer's the only one with an exemption for detail.
This little hive, the queen, I grafted her off late in the season, and I'm not sure, how well she will do. But it's a small hive, and the cover was knocked off it, and they got some rain in it. So she's uphill battle. This is just an old comb. It's got packed full of pollen here. See where it blew the leaves and stuff in? You get mad at me. See the different pollen sources, all the different colors there we brought in. Oh, not much else. Pollen and some capped honey on this. You'll notice this is the black plastic foundation. I've got some of that in these hives, so I can find the eggs more easily if I want, or the larvae if I want to try and graft queens. I'm in the learning process of grafting. Okay, let's see, where's she at here? Here, let's see, if you notice some of these, like here, they're loaded up with pollen. Little pollen baskets there. And you'll have various stages of larvae, capped larvae in here. Like I said, this isn't a robust hive, but it's the lower the population, it's easier to find things. Get into the light here. Can you see that she's starting to kick in here? There's some larvae down in here. Can you see the eggs down in here? Get the light. Get the right light correct here. Yeah, there's like
the little cells.
See the little C-shaped larvae down in there? Yeah, they're coming along. Maybe they'll recover because I see several eggs scattered around here.
That's a good sign.
I'm hoping for the best, yeah. Here's some damage from wax moths at some point or other. When the numbers are down in the hive, they can't defend it quite right. See, there's a little sucker.
Wow, that's a big sucker.
Yeah, it is.
Hey, I wonder if a brim would eat that.
Sure, they love them. They used to use those up north
bait.
for bait. And here's a darn, see the bee going after him? He went down in, a little African hive beetle.
Right there, yes, it came back up. It's going up again.
Hive beetle?
Yeah, there he is.
There it is.
So is that
Here it
pretty,
comes.
I mean, is this still a healthy hive or is
No,
this a struggling hive?
it's a struggling hive. It's a queen from late last summer, late fall, that I was just practicing learning to graft.
No idea. That's how my
And the cover blew off. You'll see bits of leaves sticking in here. So she's had things stacked against her, but I'm seeing some larvae and things down in here, so I have high hopes for her.
Is she full size yet?
Oh yeah, I mean she's full size. She's full size. Once they mate, they come back and they plump up to about their max size. That's in a matter of a couple weeks. She's there.
So what is your secret for not getting stung? They just realize you're calm and they're not going to mess with you?
Well, and you don't see me moving across the hive. If I make a quick movement across the hive, somebody might get excited. I smoked them a little bit, and the weather's nice, and everybody's happy right now.
So do you think they quite like being cheek to cheek like that from one frame to another?
Otherwise, they build frames. They build comb.
So they're rubbing each other's backs up in here, but
This is
that's
all,
how they like it.
Yeah, this is all scientifically
Yeah, I know it's a
figured.
science,
The spacing, the spacing is bee space.
Right.
Too little, and they'll seal it up with.
They'll glue it together.
Yeah, or to that top edge of that one.
Oh, there's the bits that stick out.
Those are the bigger ones. Yeah.
Yeah, do you have a mark queen?
Yeah, she's marked in here somewhere.
There's no queen cells that you, I mean, or...
No, that's kind of what I was looking for.
How often do you get
How
stung?
can you tell the difference between, I mean, what's the difference between a queen cell and a drone cell?
Not during the day. The queen risks her life to fly a mile or so from the hive to mate with somebody who's not related. They want that genetic diversity. She knows that just innately. Otherwise, you wind up, there are only a few number of sex alleles on that chromosome, linked chromosome, and if the chromosome, those alleles are the same, they wind up without the female sex. So they're a diploid male. They wind up as a diploid male. There's the queen right there in the middle. Yeah. Now there's a gland at the back. See that little, that last segment? She's got it, her butt up, but that last segment canted down. That's a Nosinoff gland, and she's emitting a homing pheromone. Trying to home in. Okay. Well, she's sending a signal. Yep. Come back, come back home. She's out here.
It's the earliest cell phone. Calling your husband. Get back from the puppy.